This morning, President Trump has revoked Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. It comes despite former President Biden in January extending Harris's protection to 18 months. This move is just the latest removal of protection by President Trump, including his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, as well as Biden's two adult children, Hunter and Ashley. And joining us now to discuss this and more is Maura Gillespie, former advisor to Speaker John Boehner, and former New York Democratic Congressman and senior advisor for Vote Vets, Max Rose. Maura, what do you make of this move by the president and the timing of it? Could it have anything to do with the former vice president's book tour coming up?
Well, it probably does, but I also don't think that the American people should necessarily be on the hook for her security during a book tour that's a private matter. I mean, she's doing it. The book tour is a funding tool for herself, more or less. I mean, she's not working in capacity for the American government anymore. So when you think about what American taxpayers are paying for, why should they pay for it beyond the 6 month, which is the protocol? I think then it also should go to Trump and Pence and Vance should remember that in 4 years this time, their security will be ending just around the same time. If it's a 6 month, well, not for Trump, but for Vance, it should be ending as well. So if we're going to stick with protocol, then 6 months it is. I also think that private security is an important factor that some people, like the Biden family, was able to afford. Ashley and Hunter Biden can afford private security because they feel like they need it. It doesn't necessarily always extend to children.
So what do you think about this? How do you see it, Max?
I mean, of course, if you look at it within just a silo, vice presidents normally lose their protective detail after 6 months. I can understand that. That's not what's going on here. For 4 years, Vice President Biden authorized protection for Mike Pompeo, an individual who actively campaigned against Joe Biden, an individual that spoke at the Republican National Convention against Joe Biden, but he knew that the threats against him were legitimate. This was a man in an administration that always put doing the right thing above politics. The Trump administration is exactly the opposite. They'll go after their political enemies with their own party and certainly will go after their political enemies across the aisle and use any tool at their disposal, even if it put people's lives at risk and their families.
So this is just one of the kind of latest controversial moves we've seen by this president. And now California Governor Gavin Newsom is releasing a statement saying, quote, "The safety of our public officials should never be subject to erratic, vindictive political impulses." He separately had this warning about President Trump for the American people.
Wake up. We're losing this country in real time. This is not bloviation. This is not exaggeration. It's happening. But people actually think this guy's serious about having another election. You think he's joking about 2028?
You think he's going to run again?
Don't give me, who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves?
Maura, what are your thoughts on Newsom's strategy here and how he's approaching all of this? Will it land?
I'm not an alarmist by any means. I've not been one that's, jumping ahead of things to say, oh, he's destroying the country, the president, all these things. I do think there are some things that the Trump administration has done and that Trump himself is doing that may be hard for us to dial back from. The amount of executive overreach, something that Republicans should be looking at and saying, how are we going to claw that back when we no longer have power? You may not be able to. And so I do think that there are genuine concerns of what Newsom is saying may actually resonate with people who recognize that the Trump's interviews where he talks about a third term isn't just a joke. It is not very funny. And when you see the redistricting planning and some of the ways that he goes about things, you're wondering, how will he? We barely got him out of the White House the first time. He did not want to leave. January 6th committee talked about staffers who heard him say, who's actually going to make me leave here? So what happens in 3.5 years from now? Will he leave? And so I think that Newsom's bringing up a concern that a lot of people probably haven't said out loud, but they're wondering.
Congressman Rose, we've talked a lot about how do Democrats counter some of these moves by the president. Governor Newsom is also warning that President Trump's trying to use the immigration agents and federal authorities like ICE as his own personal police force. Sure. Now, Newsom is countering, though, by deploying state police to other cities at a time when the president is threatening to deploy the National Guard to other cities to combat crime. At least, of course, Newsom's talking about deploying this to other cities in California. Is that a move you think we'll see more of by Democrats? Because the president's trying to suggest that Democrats are soft on crime?
It's a move we've traditionally seen. I mean, look, the governors have control over the forces at their disposal. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, sent National Guard to New York City subways 6 months ago or so. But that's not the issue here. The issue is Donald Trump is distributing precious National Guard and military resources, not based off security concerns, but based off of his own political imperatives and desires to dominate the news cycle. That's what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the fact that he has transitioned ICE into one of the largest military forces in the world, and again, will not be using those valuable resources for people's security, but to build an America that is so utterly racially divided, filled with millions of people who fear for their own personal safety each and every day. That should be the focus for Democrats. This might be just a personal issue, and we're about to all go on vacation, but stay away from the ballroom. You know, the ballroom's not the best political issue. A lot of people do like the ballroom. People love parties, but go after the fact that he is ripping at the core threads of the fabric that we have all held so dear for so long.
Congressman Max